Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro for anyone who's out there. You can find me two Z's, two R's, guys. I spell it all the time. Even my banker misspells my last name. It's incredible. It's incredible. But anyway, that's why I do it. So you guys can find me. You type in my last name. It is unique. You can find all the podcasts we do. You can type it in the search engines. The podcasts will come up. Anyway, you need to search me. That's why I spell it out for you guys. Because if you misspell it, you get a lot of others. And I'm not the only Justin. And Bizzarro's been messed up and misspelled in a lot of different ways. So that's why you can find the podcast on Instagram, Facebook. You can find Gorilla Brave on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. You can find us online at gorillabrave.love. That's where you find all the resources, guys. I'm going to introduce our next guest. Sara Warren from Nashville, Tennessee, out of the Nashville Kolache Company. How are you doing today, Sara?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me today.
I know. I usually have a little bit of a speech impediment with my A's and stuff. So saying the name of your company, I will confess to the audience I have been practicing, and I've been worried I wasn't going to get it right. So, but
You sound good.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So let's talk about your story a little bit, Sara. Let's talk about your journey from little Sara to big entrepreneur Sara. The mic is yours. You can talk as long as you want. Don't worry about how long or how little. I just am interested in your story, as I'm sure the audience is, because you have a unique product that's gaining traction, and I'm looking forward to being witness to its growth. So tell me how you got here.
Well, so Nashville Kolache Company, I started in 2022. I mean, it's still like a very part-time side business for me, but backing up, I did grow up in Texas, in Plano, Texas, and I moved to Nashville in 2007 to go to college. Originally, actually moved here for music, just like many other people do. And when I moved here, I was just so sad that, I could not find kolaches anywhere that reminded me of home. They were one of my favorite foods growing up. And for those of you who don't know, kolaches, at least the Texas style kolache, is typically like smoked sausage and cheese baked inside of a slightly sweet yeast bread. And you can get them at almost every donut shop in Texas, probably nearly every street corner. So I was very disappointed when I couldn't find any here. Or any that reminded me of home, I should say. So I moved here in 2007 to go to college, went to Belmont University, and kind of pivoted from music to nursing, and was in nursing school. Started making my own kolaches just because I love them so much and I miss them. And over the last 10 years, really just perfected my dough recipe to this like really, really light and fluffy dough. And graduated nursing school, was working at Vanderbilt, but always told my friends and family about, this kind of like dream in the back of my head that one day I would love to start I would always say a food truck, but what I really meant was like a baking business and a kolache bakery, just because I love them and wanted to share them with the community here because they just are not well known. So fast forward even more. Sorry, this is a very long answer. I got my master's degree, was working as a nurse practitioner. Then COVID hit, and then I had kids. So in 2022, I was a nurse practitioner, but working very part-time, had a 2 and a 4-year-old little girls at home, and just had a little bit more time and just decided, you know what, like I've had this dream for so long and I've got a little bit of time now and I'm just going to go for it. So that's when I started Nashville Kolache Company, and it's just been kind of like a slowly evolving thing over the last couple of years. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started.
I'm going to dissect this for you and for the audience, actually. I think it's important that we talk about this and really break this down. Let's talk about childhood. Let's talk about the dream of being a musician. It's obviously why you went to school. Belmont is a school known for that. A lot of people, when I was in Nashville, people I met on Broadway, just to anchor the audience, when I would record near Music Row and then go to consulting or work or whatever I was doing, I'd walk by Music Row every night and I would stop there usually at night to listen to music because I really love live music. Belmont just produces musicians there by nature. And Nashville, the craziest thing, the more I don't, it's, you want Nashville to stay small because the crazy tourism, but you can't help but root for Nashville because it's becoming big and economically growing in a powerhouse. And it's all this room for musicians and entrepreneurs and foodies and whatever. So I'm rooting for Nashville on this one big time, but the growth is crazy. But I spent a lot of time there for the audience, just so they know. I know a lot about the area, and this is part of the reason I asked the question, because targeting Belmont and Nashville, if you're a musician or a child becoming an adult seeking to be a musician, like, it's a good area to go because by the nature of the area there, showmanship is part of it. Let's talk about that journey. I want to anchor it a little bit. Let's talk about showmanship. Let's talk about being a musician. You had goals, you pivoted. I understand completely.
Yeah.
Marine biologist to entrepreneur over here. So let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about the dream, seeking music, what it meant to you.
Yeah, so it's actually not something that I bring up often when I'm talking about my kolache business, just because I feel like I'm a little bit all over the place, but also I think that's okay. And I think many people can relate. But I was, very heavily involved in music all growing up. It was my whole life. Always dreamed of being a singer-songwriter, was always leading worship at church. I was in show choir in high school before that was like, before there was Glee or anything like that. Anyway, I auditioned at Belmont, and then I originally started at Belmont as a commercial voice major. And I played piano all growing up, but I was waiting tables here. So that was probably my first taste of like the food industry. I was working at Ruby Tuesday actually to help pay for college. And honestly, I think I was working with a lot of ex music majors and like music business majors, and just got like, I think, paying for, a pretty high tuition rate. I think I had like a little bit of a dose of reality and like just this, just didn't know. I think being like big fish and a little sea moving to Nashville, I just didn't know if I had the confidence to pursue music, like, as a actual career. So anyway, that's why I switched to nursing.
Yeah, I have a couple things here I'm going to anchor actually. One is anyone who's a Malcolm Gladwell fan, he talks about this that happens sometimes in our youth. It's just to be aware of, especially as we have kids or we're raising entrepreneurs or we try to grow people in our businesses. Sometimes really a person that's like a brilliant musician in this case goes to a big pond and they can be smothered just because there's so much there. Ivy League schools, I think, act a lot in this fashion when it comes to intelligence. And so Malcolm Gladwell can explain it better, but there is something that goes on where, okay, now for the example of the audience, Sarah's not a musician. Maybe she went somewhere else that didn't have pressure, the same pressure. She could have been a great musician. But what is still important here, because I'm going to anchor it for the audience, is that what the same energy, the same purpose that was the musician inside of her never left you. So even though it may not be directly there, the genius, the ability, the calling, the purpose is still there. So I want to anchor this for the audience, particularly in your case, because you and I have had some time to talk before here. I've reflected a lot on it, and I've seen your journey since 2003 on Instagram and stuff like that as you're building this. And honestly, I've been to Texas and I've done hospitals in Texas. Even had a stepdaughter at a time go to SMU. And like, I don't know that I totally understood the model or the business and what you're building until you and I have had a conversation. So that's also why I'm asking these questions. Let's talk about nursing. Why nursing? Because in one way, music is very me focused. I'm trying to develop my skill and do it, maybe it is to give, maybe it's not, but in some ways it's more focused on maybe I'm going to be a singer-songwriter. Maybe I'm singing for an audience, but in nursing, it is I've done food for hospitals for a very long time. It's a very giving constantly to everyone around you, whether it's the patients, the doctors, the administrators, the food service staff, it doesn't matter. You're juggling all of those. So it's almost like I would say, lack of a better term, you're the intrapreneurs of a hospital in some ways. But talk to me about that transition. Why nursing? Why the calling to go in that direction, the pivot
So
beyond financial?
I hadn't really considered nursing because I had, just kind of thrown myself into music. And that's really all I had ever wanted to do until I was living in Nashville in college and found myself living with two Vanderbilt nurses who became really good friends of mine. And we would stay up late, of course, and share stories. And I was just really moved by some of the stories they had working in the children's hospital and just really inspired about, I've always loved people and always wanted to help people. And, even like I just have always been involved a little bit in the service industry, waiting tables or whatever. I really love people. And I thought that would be a great way for me to kind of like use my scientific brain, but also just help people. And so I just tried it. And then I just really felt like it clicked at the time. So yeah, it was a little bit of a random move for me, but I think it was a really good fit for me at the time.
One of the things I love about this, and we'll anchor Nashville even further, is I think Nashville has more hospitals or teaching hospitals or nursing universities or doctors. I don't remember exactly the statistical information. It's all in there, but it is not only is it lead in music, but it leads in nursing and hospitals and what's going on right now. I mean, Vanderbilt's one of the top, right?
Yeah,
Hospital
that
systems
was
right now.
convenient. Yeah, yeah, it definitely was great for me to switch from music to like the medical field in Nashville. So that worked out.
Still choosing a highly competitive thing that Nashville is growing at or good at, which I think is interesting. You're still choosing that path. And I want to anchor that for everyone. Not only is Nashville doing a lot of things that are forward thinking in food because of show business and music and entertainment and the growth of tourism, but you have to attach it and it's already prepped and ready to go after years. But what's also happening is we're seeing hospital systems, a secondary thing happen in these universities through attracting music there, through growing of hospitals and infrastructure. These universities are growing a lot of individuals and traveling around the world. I will tell you, during the traveling nursing days where things were going to hell or high water in the hospitals during COVID and we didn't know what was going on, a lot of nurses were new nurses and traveling nurses were fresh idea thinking nurses that understood that nursing could be done on a global scale and they could go to it. They didn't need to be anchored. And that's the traveling nurse industry now. And a lot of that came out of people traveling out of areas like Nashville, where there was an abundance because of the education. Okay. So and I'm tying it to your story because I think there's a lot here. Let's talk about nursing. What did it teach you? What did it bring into your life? Skills, things like that. How did it grow you?
Gosh, I mean, that's like such a loaded question. It really has changed me in so many ways. I think anybody who has ever been a bedside nurse in a hospital, especially like on a med surg unit, would completely understand that it's just things that you can experience. You just experience things a nurse that you really wouldn't experience anywhere else. So, of course, it taught me, a lot about time management and delegation and skills and things like that. But also on a bigger picture, just kind of like life lessons and just being grateful, for health and family and prioritizing just, our own time in a way. Yeah, I just feel like I can't even completely summarize everything I learned because it's just so much. I feel like being a nurse just teaches you also just really how to like provide really good customer service and really like hone in your empathy with other people.
What was your favorite part about those years, that pursuit?
Ooh, my favorite part about the years at working in the hospital, you mean?
Absolutely.
I think just like some of the relationships that I would have developed with patients and family members, especially if we had patients that were in and out more often and we would get to know them, but also the relationship that I developed with a lot of my team members because you're really like going through something pretty tough and pretty crazy together most of the time. And you really have to like bond together as a team just to get through each day and also just, as like a support system. So, yeah, I would say just all of the relationships through that experience.
One of the things that all the years of hospital being in what I'll call healthcare feeding or food, I really think it should be called something else, but because you're trying to also add to the health of the patient so they can get out of there. But it's a whole other thing. But one of the things is the nurses, the ability to communicate. It's
Hmm.
on a whole other level that outside of the healthcare industry, has been very hard for me to adapt even to life because communication is so well done. Not necessarily there's bad communicators in hospitals, but on the level of bad communication compared to the rest of the world, it's generally not as bad. It's just bad because of the crisis situations and the situations in life or death that hospitals are in. But because of that, also, communication is clear. I would parallel it a lot to like animals on a farm and coordination and making sure they're fed and do whatever on a larger scale so they don't die. In some ways, it's life or death situations.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things that I think is here. One of the things that we talked about at the beginning that we're starting to anchor here is being a Renaissance woman, being a Renaissance man, being a Renaissance human, is that sometimes we have to be open to collecting different skills because we don't know what those skills will add to in the future. And it's not linear, especially as an entrepreneur, especially in something like this. So I'm going to anchor this further. You mentioned perfecting a recipe over 10 years. You were doing this obviously before 2022, before you released your initial product.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that because obviously it was burning inside you. It's manifesting, whether God's growing it or you're growing it, but the seed's there and it's starting to grow. So you get to this point in 2022. Let's talk about this because it's going on at the same time as starting a family, settling down. You have a career, but you're also doing this.
Yeah, like I said, I just kind of always had this in the back of my mind. Like, I always loved baking as a kid and kind of had like an entrepreneurial spirit. So I just feel like, starting something that's my own and a baking business, making something that I love and that I'm so passionate about would just be just so rewarding for me. But I perfected my dough just, like anybody would, just perfecting their chili recipe or making their, spaghetti and tweaking the ingredients every time. But I never made like a lot of yeast bread growing up. And the more I did get into it, it is such a science. And, anybody who makes like a sourdough or any other kind of yeast bread knows how all the variables can greatly affect your finished product. You've got the humidity, the temperature, the length of your rise, the temperature of there's just so many factors. So, not even counting what types of ingredients you use, your mixers, your method for kneading. So there was just a lot of experimenting over those years, just to kind of get the dough to where I want it. Because for me, that's the best part about a kolache, of course, is the dough. Anybody can, make a pig in a blanket with like a roll of biscuit dough from the grocery store. But anyway, my kolaches for me, it's like all about the dough. So it was just kind of like a gradual experimentation over the years. And then as I thought more about starting a baking business, just kind of like was more intentional about writing down my changes and kind of noting like what things worked and how, since I was really just kind of like figuring this out on my own.
Yeah, I think that's what you're doing is amazing. Let's talk about introducing something that's not been there before. You're introducing, you said you couldn't find it. So you're
Hmm.
building a brand. Okay, let's talk about introducing it to the public. I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty on cooking and baking and whatever that you touched on, but I want to talk first about how do you introduce this? You've sort of been doing it, I assume, as you've been experimenting over the 10 years to friends and family. But now you're talking about a greater level. You're talking about solidifying this. So, let's talk about, okay, the mindset, like what's the triggering point of I'm going to make this a business? And then from there, how do you convince everyone to take on something that may be different? Maybe not. I don't know.
Yes. So it has been a little bit of a barrier, but as far as the turning point and for me just deciding to go for it, I think was, after having young kids as a new mom, I think having kids, you lose a little part of yourself. Not that, I love my children fully, but your life is completely changed. And I think starting the kolache business was just a way for me to kind of like throw myself into something that I had always wanted to do. And while I'm, doing it part time, so I could focus as much on my family as, I needed to at the time, it was really driven by that. But I did have a pretty big barrier, I feel like, coming here where most people have never heard of the word kolache before. And so a lot of it is me educating and explaining to people, like, what is a Texas style kolache? And then trying to convince them why they're so great and why they should try them. So it has been an interesting process. And some people I have tried to tap into there is, of course, a lot of people living in Nashville that are from Texas originally. And so that is a large population of my customer base. But I am, still trying to reach people living here that have never had them before. And I often am able to get people to try them and then they're hooked as well. And, our repeat customers as well.
All right. I love this. All right. So you start the business. How do you get your first customers? What do you do to introduce it? Do you start with catering? Do you tell me the mindset here because I can tell you're calculated. We mentioned intention.
Hmm.
Let's talk about this.
So it, I'm still new to this business and I'm still learning and I'm in a pretty big, like transitional phase right now, even. But my original plan was, and it's kind of funny thinking back on it, but I was going to deliver kolaches to like neighbors nearby and I was going to try and tap into next door to advertise there to people living close by. And I even had like downloaded an app to help me optimize my route for delivering them. So this was my initial plan, which really changed right away. And so I think I initially started offering delivery and I did that a few times, but then had to scale pretty quickly and realized that just was not an efficient use of my time. So instead started offering pickups and my first few pickups were literally just at like a parking lot by a neighborhood park. And initially reaching out to like neighbors and Facebook groups and mostly friends and family for my first like very mini business it was kind of like piloting it to see, okay, is anybody interested in this at all?
So I like this. Talk to me about what it is. Let's describe it for the audience. How do you create them? I'm not asking you to give away your secrets, but how do you actually create these items, the uniqueness? How do you serve it? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the delivery of this because I think it's unique and I do think it's something that's going to be popular. I do think as humans, as we keep going more mobile, even on feet, even in cities like Nashville, that things like this are going to rise to the top just because of the convenience. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I think I probably should mention that. So kolaches were really originally introduced to Texas by Czech settlers in the 1800s. So a traditional kolache, and I've had many people correct me, is really like more of a sweet kolache version. It's a round, slightly sweet yeast dough topped with sweeter fillings like apricot and prune. And then Texans started adding savory fillings like sausage and cheese or sausage jalapeno and cheese, or even sometimes like pepperoni or ham. Anyway, you can dream up anything. But so I've had many people reach out over the years and get after me saying that's not a kolache. Technically, it's like a klobasniki, I think is how you would pronounce it. So yes, I do refer to mine as Texas style kolaches. And when I talk about a Texas style kolache, I'm mainly referring to the savory version of a kolache, which my main menu item is a sausage and cheese kolache, or like a sausage jalapeno and cheese kolache, which I had growing up. And that's like the main thing I think of when I think of a Texas style kolache. So going back to your question of how do I make them? So you really, it's like I said, mostly about the dough, and you make a very slightly sweet yeast dough. It's enriched with eggs and milk, and ideally, you mix your dough and let it rise, and then you would shape the kolaches. So there's different ways to do that, but you take like a dough ball or a small, portion of dough and wrap it around a sausage and cheese or sausage jalapeno and cheese or whatever savory fillings you want if you're making a savory kolache. And then you would let it complete another rise, either, at room temperature or refrigerated, or you could do, you know, an extended rise if you want to, keep it in the fridge overnight. And then after the second rise, then you bake them. So similar to anybody who's ever made like a dinner roll, but you're just filling it with lots of yummy ingredients before or right after shaping the kolache. I also do make sweet kolaches sometimes. It's a like very popular item, and I do offer those in cinnamon rolls at normally like holidays, but those would be more of like a round dough that you then kind of create an indentation in and add whatever sweet fillings you want. And I typically would do like a cream cheese and like blueberry filling or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty much a general kind of like guide on how you would make one.
Love it. Let's talk about the menu. You mentioned the main ones on your menu. Let's talk about menu, what your customers look like now, how that business model has changed since that initial one that you talked about from going to delivery, which I understand because it was COVID. I think it was a thought process then because no one knew how long it was going to go on for sure, still even in 2022. But let's talk about transition of plan, menu items, and then now like what the business model looks like.
Yeah, so my menu items, like I said, my main menu items that I'm always offering are the, sausage and cheese kolache, and then always like spicy sausage jalapeno and cheese kolache. And I will always offer those. Sometimes I'll feature one of my favorites is actually like salami and cheese, which is really, really good for lunch. And then, like I said, I will feature at times like the blueberry and cream cheese kolache, or have done like strawberry and cream cheese or cinnamon cream cheese. And then also really popular are I offer take and bake cinnamon rolls, which, people go crazy for, of course, like Christmas time on Easter and Thanksgiving, because they're really a convenient way for people to make some really amazing, like homemade cinnamon rolls for their guests fresh on the morning that they want to serve them. But as far as how the business model has evolved, so I'm in a transitional period right now, and I've moved into a new commercial kitchen out of West Nashville. So I have, rotated from a small delivery model to more of a pop-up model because I quickly realized that like a food truck was not really a feasible option for me to like mass produce a large amount of baked goods. I don't want to be on a truck doing that, nor do I know that you could even like stock it with the appropriate equipment to do so. So I think that's why like a commissary, kitchen is a really good option for smaller companies like me. So I rent the kitchen space and then I host pop-up sales either at the kitchen or with other nearby businesses a couple of times a month. And that's been really great because the collaboration with other businesses has also helped me to grow, which I mostly am doing through social media. So I've actually done most of my sales through pre-sales on social media. So the collaboration and allowing the pop-up sale host to also share my information, reach all of their followers about kolaches has been one of the primary ways that I've been able to grow.
Yeah, and the social media as well. I think you have a good presence and you've worked on it. Can we talk a little bit about that as well? Like you're building following, you're starting to narrow in your brand, the stories, the identity, the logo. Let's talk a little bit about all of that because you're building something, you're becoming an entrepreneur. It's not necessarily, I talked about entrepreneur as a nurse, but it's not necessarily something you were exposed to before. So now you've created a product. Now you're having to learn all the things around it that support it, right? So talk to me about that, including the social media.
Yeah, so social media is not something that I am like super knowledgeable about, and that has definitely been a learning curve for me other than just for my own like personal use. And I feel like people coming up in the next generation are all just like so amazing at everything to do with social media. And there's so many people that have jobs now just catered to like outsourcing of social media management for other companies. So taking it on myself has been a little bit overwhelming and just trying different things. And I will say I'm not like an expert with regard to social media and building a brand on social media because I am definitely still figuring it out as well. But that is the main way that I've been trying to grow my customers through posts on I made a Facebook page and I made my Instagram page and I've tried to just slowly build that. And that Instagram and Facebook pages were really my only website for the longest time. And I've only recently made a website, but I think still most people can just refer to those pages for information. And I post like my latest pop-up schedule on there. It's really great because then customers can tag me of pictures, their kolaches they're enjoying and share that with their followers. And I can save that to a story highlight for reviews. I've also tried joining different Facebook groups and trying to find ways to think like, okay, so I know I have to overcome this barrier of people here, like they don't know what kolaches are. So trying to think at first, how do I reach out to at least people living here that I know love kolaches, people probably that were from Texas that moved here and couldn't find them like I could. So I tried originally looking for groups. There's like a Texas girls living in Nashville group or something that I joined. I joined shamelessly a Cowboys fan living in Nashville, just trying to find ways that I could find like, displaced Texans living here as well. Moms groups actually have been like a really great tool too. I mean, most Facebook groups have pretty strict rules about marketing. There's a Foodies of Nashville group that has exploded. I don't know if you're a member of that one. I think it has 70,000 followers now, but that's also been a great place to just talk a little bit about the business because they allow people to promote on Mondays. So I have done that a few times and I have gotten a lot of attention and a lot of new customers from there. I'm trying to think what other questions you asked me and trying to stay on topic here.
No, you're good. You're doing a great job. I think one of the things that I love the most is that you're managing something, you're building it, and it takes a while to build a business. The first parts of building are always foundational, and they're always a little bit of pivoting and building pillars and taking things away or changing menu items. And sometimes the star of your show is not what you think it is.
Mhm.
So one of the things I think that you're doing a great job in with your business is you're venturing out. You're doing what needs to be done. You know your product's good. You've gotten the feedback. It is starting to catch on. If picking up on it or others are picking up on it. I know you were on a show recently. I'm introducing it. Those are all things that, okay, like not only is it good, but who doesn't like sausage in the first place, right? Or things. And a delivery system that works. It's portable, and I'm gonna say this in everyone's like the hot dog sausage realm in terms of quick service, fast food, whatever, wherever category you want to put it, it has not been dominated or even created yet because there hasn't been a trailblazer to do it. It's one of the reasons I pay so much attention to what's going on there right now. It is an untapped industry.
Well,
And
I
so,
will say it is not a hot dog. I
no,
know
I
that's not
know.
what you were saying, but that is just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
every
No.
time I try to explain to people in Nashville, I have friends that joke that it's basically a hot dog. I will say that's a pet peeve, and kolaches are not hot dogs. So let me
Yeah.
just take the opportunity to put my pet peeve out there. I would say gourmet pig in a blanket is okay, but yes, hot dogs are great too, but these are not.
Okay. Not hot dogs kolaches, but in general, I would say that the these type of portable, I guess the total
Savory
category,
treats.
hot dog
Yes.
is a sausage category. Uh, so anyway, of sausage overall, the category, there is
Hmm.
opportunity there for growth in quick service, bakery, fast food, however anyone wants to look at it. It is an untapped resource right now, and a brand everyone knows Nathan's, but it didn't grow in a proper way, and it certainly didn't grow in a way that made that type of food luxurious in our country. Okay, so I am saying really is that I think what you're doing, there's going to be growth in it. I think there's opportunity in it. And what I also think is by the nature of who you are, you seek opportunity and open doors by chasing music, pivoting to nursing, this thing inside of you wanting to be an entrepreneur. So let's ask this question. Let's take it in a different direction temporarily. Entrepreneurially, was there anyone in your life that was an entrepreneur that influenced you, or is this something that always has been inside of you since you were younger?
That's a good question. I mean, my dad was an entrepreneur. He had many different jobs growing up. He actually went to school. I think he went to college at 17 or something crazy and got a degree in chemical engineering. But then, his job evolved many times too as an adult. He worked in tech and got his master's in business. But then when I was in high school, he did start his own company, which I won't go into the very nitty-gritty details of that, but it was kind of cool watching him develop a product and hire a team, and eventually go on to sell the company. So he was probably my first example, and I told this story like on my little news segment last week, but I did have a little baking business when I was 12, really just because I accidentally broke one of my mom's like very expensive porcelain figurines and I felt so terrible. So I started a little baking business that I didn't tell her why I started, just so I could make enough money to replace it for her. So I started selling like pies and cookies, especially over Thanksgiving and Christmas, made brochures. And this all I did with the help of my dad. So he helped me make, marketing materials, and we would calculate costs of all of my ingredients and help me sell it and whatever. So he kind of helped me with this whole little business. And I think that was my first taste of being an entrepreneur, sorry, as a kid. And he taught me a lot of lessons even back then at a young age. And one thing that I remember, this is just random, but the one of the main lessons I remember he taught me when I was a kid was I was trying to think about like how much am I going to price these cookies for? And we were probably walking around Walmart and shopping for flour and sugar. And I'm thinking, like, these are not worth very much. And he said, something is worth whatever someone is willing to pay for it. Hence, I guess, the way a 12-year-old could sell, a Thanksgiving pie for $20. But anyway, a long winded answer to your question is my dad was probably the main kind of like example in my life of starting your own business and being an entrepreneur.
It's the anchoring moment for you. Totally. That's why it circled back. That's amazing.
Mhm.
This is definitely everyone in the audience You need to keep an eye on what Sarah's doing here. You need to keep an eye on Sarah. Where she's growing, she's blossoming. I'd say you're regenerating into the entrepreneur that was there. You gained a bunch of skills along the way to get there, but what you're doing and how you're doing it and blazing a trail in a new product, not necessarily new in Texas, but new for the world. This is amazing. No different than Kentucky Fried Chicken introduced fried chicken to the world, guys. Seriously, and it was
Thank
from
you.
Kentucky.
Yes, I would only dream to be Kentucky Fried Chicken level one day. But thank you so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
the validation and the encouragement.
Yeah, it's all in you, I would say. Colonel Sanders, it was all in him to begin with. It's just he had to find the right thing that he was passionate about, that he identified with. I think you've already found it.
Mhm.
Even so passionately correcting me with the hot dogs, for sure. That's what it takes, right? You need to know your brand. You need to know your story. And you
Mhm.
need to stick up for what you're doing, for sure. You've got it. You've got the ability to communicate. We discussed the nursing skills. We discussed music. That's your voice. That's the ability to talk about something. You know how many jingles? I still know the McDonald's jingle, but even more so the Coca-Cola jingle about the sun will always shine and the birds will always sing. I think it's like circa 1993. Okay. Like they matter for brands. And so you've stacked a bunch of skills related to an anchoring moment that if I were consulting or coaching anyone, I would anchor that moment as a childhood for you, then anchor your journey for the skills to bring you to where you need to be to now take what the next part of your purpose is, which is probably your lifelong purpose right here, and growing your community and your environment. And this is your vehicle to do it. But it's amazing. I'm glad that you came on the show, Sarah. And I'm not done asking questions, but I just want to say that I want to give you a little bit of time to talk about anything that maybe I haven't talked about or that you thought about talking about leading up to the show, and giving a little room for you to talk without me prompting it. If there's anything you thought about or you feel needed to say or want to talk about in terms of your product or you or your history or your story.
No pressure.
Yeah,
Okay.
no pressure. I don't give much pressure.
Well, I will
Yeah.
say, as I said in the beginning, that, I am just doing this part time and I am so passionate about it and it's been so fun. But my main priority right now really is my kids. I have two little girls and I am still working as a nurse practitioner part time. So, I am so excited about this business and where it's going. But, just right now, I'm unable to really throw myself into going to farmers market every day and hustling the way that I could have hustled in my 20s, when I didn't have any other priorities. So it's been so fun for me, but I mean, I'm not going to lie, really just trying to figure out like, how do I balance being a mom and also having a part-time job and a husband who works from home full time while trying to run a new baking business. And it's been so fun and has given me like this sense of purpose, but for anyone kind of following along, I apologize because that is the reason that my pop-up schedule is so sporadic. It's because I don't want to miss the Saturday soccer games when they come up. And at some point, maybe our family schedule will evolve and may allow me to provide more consistency. But right now, that's just not in the cards. And I just bring this up to say, I know there's so many other moms out there that are trying to probably also, start a business or, do some juggle like three different things, trying to juggle parenthood, trying to juggle, marriage and after school activities and part-time, full-time job, starting a business, whatever it may be. And it's challenging, but it can definitely be worth it. So I'm just, I think what I'm trying to do is just explain that this is why my business is so part-time is because it is such a passion of mine, but my kids still come first and I just don't want to miss out on any of the, time that I have with them while they're still little. And so hopefully this will not be like an over the night success with the business, but just kind of like a slow burn and hopefully will not fizzle out. Hopefully will continue to grow as my time becomes more available as well, like as my kids are older.
Yeah, absolutely. A few things I want to anchor here, and then I have a couple questions just around that as we start to finish up. The first thing I want to say is that in my experience working with a lot of mothers,
Hmm.
family hierarchies that in your situation, I'm just going to anchor this over 24 years, guys, 28 years now, sorry, but specifically in consumer packaged goods and franchising and building restaurants or food trucks and food trailers. One of the things that I will tell you, and I don't know how else to put it other than it's divine design, is that in these scenarios and what's going on for you, Sarah, is that you're building an infrastructure and a base at a pace by which it also allows you to build the family. Because if you don't build the family and you have the business and they're going to help you with the business later on, you haven't built the proper family to help you with the business. Okay, that's one. Number two, in families and in life, crisis happen, businesses change, jobs change. In my life, in my businesses alone, over 24 years for food service partners, or in 28 years, let's look at it. I had 9/11 when we were in New York City doing hospital food. We had the financial crisis, which all of a sudden dropped 40% of the patient counts across the globe. Oh, okay. Then let's go to COVID, which does the opposite. But when you grow too fast, guys, you have to come up with cash flow to grow, to keep up with the growth, because you get paid later in the healthcare business. Trust me. So these things, it's why I diversified my businesses into restaurants, food trucks, all of those things, why we did those things, IT, POS systems, all the things that we did, why I diversified myself beyond just food and beverage as a human, so I could make sure I had a diverse set of skills. Always. That's what we're talking about here. But I think the most important part is if something happens in the family unit or there needs to be a pivot or a crisis, there's already this business lying and there's already this entrepreneur being built in a foundation for them to leap off of. That's why COVID had so many people leap out as entrepreneurs, guys. It was a
Hmm.
perfect timing for those who were prepared. And a lot of the preparation had to do with what we're just talking about. 10 years doing pizza, 10 years making pizza for someone else, 3 years, oh, I just decided to do pizzas in my backyard to help out my community. Okay, that started businesses, guys. Some of these businesses have 3, 4, 5 locations right now. In our franchising, it's important preparation, and you never know when you're going to need to step in and do it. We don't have control. Okay.
Hmm.
So, but we can be prepared. So that's what I think, what's going on here. And I like the pace that you're doing. I wouldn't say any other way. It gives you the room to grow, to change, to understand. And the discipline right now and the love and the energy into your brand is exactly who you are. And I wouldn't want anyone to take that away from your brand, Sarah, at all, because who you are, where you are, growing your family, that energy is felt in your brand.
Well, thank you.
You are doing this same thing. You have an infant brand. It's probably somewhere between 2 and 4 years old, no different than your children. You have to grow it at the same pace, right? You can't smother it. You can't, not pay any attention to it. So I think it's resemblance of your life. And I think if we were talking about a trajectory and weaving a common thread in our life, it couldn't be better. Just from someone that's observed a lot and had the privilege of bearing witness to other people's testimonies, for sure. Wow, Sarah, I appreciate your time. I definitely have grown and thought about a lot of things. The next steps for the business as you grew, we don't need to answer these because I think, it's uncertain. You're growing with the pace of your family. I think we can talk about that. Where are you hoping this goes eventually? We can start to anchor that with us in the audience. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is, at what point for you would you make the decision, or do you feel is a good time to take it on full time? How would you make that decision? Two questions there
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. So as far as like where I see this going, that's a great question. And like I said, I've just transitioned into a new kitchen and I've kind of changed my model up slightly. So I've kind of like wrestled with what exactly that question. What would this look like? Do I move? Do I go all in? Do I buy a food truck? Do I try to lean into the farmer's market? Do I jump in and get a retail space? There's so many different options I could think of. I think what makes the most sense and for the near future would be to try to establish some really great relationships with nearby coffee shops and do some wholesaling. That way, I can not only sell product more conveniently on my own time, not having to do the pop up sales, but also through that will reach more of the community by putting out marketing at different coffee shops. So that may be like kind of a stepping stone. Of course, I would love to one day, have a brick and mortar store and have peons running it for me one day, but I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea if it's, going there, but I'm just kind of trying to enjoy the process and enjoy like the uncertainty right now of, I'm just figuring this out as I go. I think as many people are doing, and just trying my best not to stress and feel overwhelmed when I don't know exactly what's happening next. Fortunately, I have like an amazing family and my husband who, of course, he's an amazing provider. So I have that luxury to do this part time right now. But as far as when I might consider like doing it full time would be maybe when my kids are older, I'll just kind of play it by ear. And, once my younger one is in elementary school, I'll have to kind of just give it time to see what does that schedule look like? How is our work life balance at that time? Am I ready to completely jump in? Like I said, I'm still part time as a nurse practitioner right now, mainly to keep my license active. And I'm not completely ready to step away from that. And I'm not sure, I might want to get back into that one day. So, anyway, that's on the back burner too. But I hope I answered your question. I'm mainly just going to have to kind of just take it day by day and see, what life is like for my family. And if our family schedule allows me to amp my business a little bit more, and if I am able to establish some like wholesale connections or ways to increase demand, then I will hopefully just kind of work on those together.
Amazing. Last question for you.
Mhm.
Where can everyone find you on social media, online? If they're in Nashville, how do they find your pop-ups? That's the number one. And then number two is, what is your favorite part about this business right now? So first, the social media online, and then second, what's your favorite part right now?
So I'm glad you asked. People can find me on Facebook or Instagram it's just Nashville Kolache Company. Kolache is spelled Kolache, just like it sounds. So find me there. Please follow along so you can mainly find out about my pop-up schedules on social media is the easiest way. So I will post, I have a pop-up sale coming up this week, and I will just post it in my stories as well as my story highlights for my pop-up schedule. And it's also in my bio on both my Facebook and Instagram. So that's the easiest way to find out about my pop-up schedule. Please always feel free to like DM me or reach out if you are really wanting to get your kolache fix and I don't have a schedule posted, or if you have any other questions. And then to answer your other question, what my favorite part about this business is right now, I would probably say, I think my favorite part would just be like the relationships and the interactions that I get to have with my customers. I just think it is so much fun when I'm a pop-up sale to try to connect with my customers, and whether it be people from Texas and learning about where are they from and how did you hear about me and where did you have kolaches growing up, and just connecting with those people. And then of course I love hearing how much they loved my kolaches and it reminded them of home, or it's their new favorite thing that their kids are obsessed with or they want to have every Christmas morning. I think just the relationships that I've been developing with customers, like repeat customers, as well as new customers, and then the stories and reviews that I get from them are probably my favorite part so far.
Thank you, Sarah, for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience. So everyone knows in the audience, I was 20 minutes late today. And just maybe I shouldn't admit this, but one of the things my mom says all the time is, oh, Justin, 3 weeks early, being born late ever since. And just, I honestly try to be on time always. But joking aside, sometimes I give more than I should. So I appreciate, Sarah, so the audience knows I'm going to thank you publicly. I appreciate the pre-conversation. I appreciate what you're doing in the food community. I think there's more to what you're doing from a bakery standpoint, from a creative standpoint, from what was anchored in you as a child with your dad and that baking experience, the reward there, that same reward you're feeling now in a lot of ways. And God, the universe, life gave you the skills to prepare you for what you're doing now. And I'm definitely interested to see where it goes. One of the things I will leave with you is that you have this passion for your family and your food, and sometimes they're the same thing. And one of the things that I've noticed in the world that I loved doing as a kid that was successful for businesses was fundraisers through food and how those are done. And, the Girl Scouts are still using the same model. Why? Because it works.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this passion, you have this thing. I don't know, but I bet there's ways. Maybe it's not fundraisers. Maybe it's other things with your community or school. But I think there's a lot there in things that you do that you'll find that'll tie and grow your business at a sustainable pace for you. That'll also allow your family to grow along with it and in it and on it as well. That's just for you. I know, and you have connections to hospitals and who knows? I mean, there's probably ways that Kolaches could go there as well. Right?
Kolache a day keeps the
Kolache.
doctor away. I
Yeah,
don't know
Kolache.
it's a little bit of a conflicting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know, but for the most part, I see a lot of food trucks and stuff do pretty well at hospitals and stuff like that. But I think there's something there, especially since you have the credibility with them
Yeah.
already. So I don't know. You're a great entrepreneur. I see so much potential in you, and thank you for sharing your story. Again, everyone in the audience, please follow, like, share the episodes, comment. That's how they do well. If you like what you hear or you think it might help another entrepreneur or another food business, please share it with them. That's what the goal is here. Sarah, will you please tell everyone one more time where they can find you online?
Yeah. So follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Nashville Kolache Company. That's spelled KOLACHE, Nashville Kolache Company. Thank you so much again for reaching out and for having me. This has been so fun, and I am not sure anybody will take anything away from this, but it was a really great opportunity, and I really appreciate it and all of your, support and encouragement.
Yeah. Do you do catering and events and things like that?
I am starting to. Yes, I do have like a catering event next week. So please reach out for any catering needs, business meetings, or whatever. I would love to help you guys out with that.
Awesome. I look forward to the continuation and telling your story, Sarah, and the growth of your business. And I do think that the parallel between your family and you and the growth of your business are going to go hand in hand just by the nature of who you are and your energy and the leadership that you take on. So I'm a fan. I'll be rooting for you. I root for everyone, but I'm definitely going to pay attention because I think you're on to something great. And I will say that there are a lot of avenues for something like this and growing it within your family, being close to your family. And I look forward to seeing how all of that manifests within you and you show it to the world. So audience, pay attention. This, again, the sausage line, it's a big deal. And even so much so back in 2020 to 2022, I was heavily involved in trying to acquire a sausage manufacturing company because I do see the trend coming. So I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Thank you, Sara. Nashville, I miss you guys all there. I know there'll be Nashville guys there, but I don't know what it is. You guys hold a special place in my heart as an entrepreneur when everything changed in my life and businesses changed after 24 years. Some of it after being sold over years, some of it contracts going different directions, some of it just deciding it was time to move on. Nashville became the place where I started all over as an entrepreneur. It was my proverbial gym. When I had to go back to my grassroots at 18 years old or younger, whenever, even mowing lawns and doing all that as an entrepreneurial kid, the grassroots were in Nashville. It will always be that place for me. I will always think about running as hard as I can from Music Row, going over the hump where the churches are, seeing the churches, and then going down Broadway, running down Broadway before it got crowded, hitting the water and the river, and then pacing myself back because that was a moment I didn't know what I was doing. I was lost as an entrepreneur. I had no more employees, no more businesses. I was rebuilding, personal life in shambles. Nashville was the place that rebuilt me or built this podcast into what it is. It was that city. So thank you guys. I love you guys. Thank you again, Sara. You've brought the inner entrepreneur out of me, also the young one, the fighter, the remembering what it's like to just stay consistent and disciplined and patient in the moment. So I appreciate that. Everyone, we're out.